Hello! Today we have what you've been waiting for, a really filthy, disgusting retro computer that's in need of some tender loving care. Let's get on with it. As you will see, I have on the black gloves because the contents of this box is minging. Hopefully you've seen the other videos with the computers rescued from the abandoned shop with the help of Ginger Hippy Gaming. Well, that's what I've got in this box, and we're going to get it working. The first one was sent to CRG Glenn, Casual Retro Gamer. His video is out, and if you've watched that, you should recognise the same signs on mine. All of the rust around the joystick port and the RF modulator. As well as the rust, the case is filthy, it's covered in bird poo and whatnot. Disgusting. I'm going to quickly spray some vinegar on the screws and just give them a quick scrub with a wire brush to clean them up a little bit before we get the case open. Thankfully, the screws came out easy enough, nothing was damaged, and we can take our first look inside. Just as we expected, the area around the joystick port is very rusty. Although, if we remember from the Atari series, sometimes it's only on the surface. Let's remove the board from the case. There is a ribbon cable that connects the game port to the main board, so we want to be very careful. We don't know what state that is in, and we will gently pull the board out. The corner where the joystick port is looking very nasty. The next job is to remove the game slot PCB from the top of the case, and then we can have a good look at what we've got to deal with. And the board does look very dirty, but it just looks like dirt and grime. It's only the one corner where the joystick port is that looks like it's taken a lot of damage, and then the RF modulator looks absolutely disgusting, but we are taking that off, so I'm really not too worried about that. Before we can go any further, we need to take off that RF shield on the bottom, and we can have a better look at the state of the bottom of the board, and it looks very similar to the top with the rusty corner. Now we can get down to some proper cleaning. The first step that I'm going to do is spray it with vinegar, white vinegar, and just going to spray it, let it soak for a little bit, and then we will start scrubbing and get rid of as much of the surface rust and dirt as we can before it goes in the ultrasonic cleaner. The next step before the ultrasonic cleaning is getting all of the crud out of the cartridge slot. It was really baked in there. So I used my air compressor and we managed to get rid of everything that was hidden away in the socket. The final thing to do before the ultrasonic cleaning is remove that RF modulator. Unfortunately, it wasn't that easy to get rid of, and the solder was just not flowing well. Plus, it was got a big ground plane on there as well, so it did take a little bit of persuading, but eventually we do get that removed. As I expected, it was absolutely filthy underneath, so we've got to give that a quick clean, and then we should be ready for ultrasonic cleaning. So I've done the basics. We've soaked it and scrubbed it with some vinegar, and we've got rid of all the surface rust, and then I gave it a good scrub, and then it's gone in the ultrasonic cleaner, and you can see that it doesn't look particularly bad after that treatment. The case has also been in and it's getting better, it just needs more scrubbing basically. The top of the case is gradually getting there, so that just needs time. So we will get to the microscope at some point, but this side doesn't look too bad, and we've got quite a lot of pitting underneath there, and there are points where the tracers also have got dark spots on them. So these points around here, there's some more around here. This part just here also looks particularly bad. This section as well. So we need to find out if these are damaged tracers or if it's just the solder mask. I'm going to let this dry overnight. There's quite a lot of rust on this crystal, so I'm not sure if that is going to be any good. This whole corner was covered, but this is basically the joystick. But this crystal doesn't look particularly good, and sometimes they don't like being put in the ultrasonic cleaner.
Day 2.
It's the next day. I let it dry, and anything that was moving or sockets or connectors I sprayed with some deoxit when I got to work in the morning, and then left that for the rest of the day. And now we're going to do some basic tests. I checked that the switch works, checked that the fuse is okay, and I do basic tests to make sure that the 5V is not shorted to anything before we attempt to turn it on. Using my bench power supply, I do limit the current first, just to make sure it's not going to go bang, and then we give it 1 amp, we turn it on, we can see the current that it's drawing, and then I check for voltages on the regulator, make sure that we actually have 5 volts, and it's looking okay. I decided to go for it and insert the Hue card that I brought, it was like £5, and connected it up to the capture device. Turned it on, and as you can see, nothing, nada, blank screen. I then start to look at the first thing that I would normally check, which is, do we have a clock? Remember that our crystal is incredibly rusty, and it turns out that we have nothing from the oscillator. This one is a self-contained oscillator. You give it 5V, you give it ground, it outputs whatever the oscillator is set to output, and we've got absolutely nothing. Until I can get a replacement oscillator, I'm kind of stuck. So I make the best of my time, and I reflowed all of the solder and checked all of the legs are good and are rigid on all of the chips, the memory on the main board. And then flipped the board over and then removed the actual oscillator itself and decided to just test that on its own, just to confirm that it was dead and that it wasn't something else that was stopping it from working. And it is dead.
Later.
A few days have passed and some items have arrived in the post. First, we have a cap kit and a new regulator that I ordered from eBay. The other item was sent by the amazing Simon Locke, or Eragan, and it's a pre-programmed oscillator with the right frequency for the PC Engine. This is amazing because I couldn't find a new one anywhere. Okay, I am connected up to the video capture. We switch it on and blank screen, it still doesn't work.
Eventually.
After many hours this afternoon, when I should have been working, I was determined not to give in and get this working. So there was a few issues along the way. Obviously, the old oscillator was dead. I'll show you the picture on the screen, and when I got this, and so far everybody else that's got these, there was a wire mod on the bottom. And what we think is happening is the wire mod was sending the clock to the expansion port so the clock can be manipulated, possibly to get it working for PAL. As we'll see on the screen here, after I put the oscillator in, the oscillator was giving a good clock, but when I looked at the pins on the various chips, it had a bad clock and it didn't look like anything was working. I had no activity on anything at all. Talking to the very helpful guys on the RMC Discord, and we've got a PC Engine section, and the general agreement was remove those two wire mods and repair the tracers. So as you will see here, that is what I did. One of them had a via, so you had to make sure that it connected from the one trace to the via to the other trace. That's very important because that was the clock signal. So after we put the clock in, turned it on, and still nothing. It was still a blank screen. We do have a work in progress schematic. So I was looking around and was checking address and data lines. The other side of the card is actually the RAM, and these two chips here are the video RAM. So it won't do anything without a card, but you should still get a white screen. And it looked to me like the address was doing something, but the data lines weren't happy. And then the communication on the 6270 chip to the video RAM was doing nothing again. I spent quite a while checking and trying to find some sort of pattern, and I couldn't really see anything. So I just went back to basics and I reflowed the RAM, I reflowed all the connections on here, and I reflowed all of the connections on here that connect the main board to the Hue card board. And then I worked on more of the passives that were in the crusty area on the bottom, and I reflowed those. With just checking that all of the data and signal lines were there, even though we've got these quite corroded tracers on here with the solder mask and it looks dark, the signals are actually okay. So then, to my surprise, I connected it up to the capture device. I turned it on. The system is working just fine. So that was a massive relief. Came into work this morning and I had some parcels that are going to help finish off this video. So first of all, we have to thank Johnny from Re-Enthused for sending over one of his spare controllers. I gave it a quick clean. Some of the pads were a little bit corroded and that should be good to go. These two items came in from AliExpress. So we have a video amplifier and one of the very cheap turbo EverDrives. This does mean that we can load in some diagnostic software. You will see that the PC Engine is pretty much back in its case. So let's finish off putting that back together, get set up and do some final testing. So we have our controller and on here there is a pad test program. So that's working perfectly, amazing. I did try to make my own just in case I couldn't get one cheap enough, and it doesn't quite work correctly. The D-pads work okay, but these aren't. But it doesn't matter now because we've got this one from Johnny. Yeah, so this was the first game that I had. So I had an import, it was RGB modded. I would say that that is working. There we go. I got the PC Engine working and it looks like it's fully working. I'm very pleased with how that turned out. Considering the state that it was in when I got it, it was really filthy and we had that heavily corroded corner, but just like on the Atari, the corrosion was just on the surface and what was underneath was actually okay. So with the usual treatment and care, I was able to get it working and I'm very, very pleased. I have to thank some people that made this possible. Obviously Ginger Hippy for sending me this in the first place. Check out his channel, he's made a playlist so that you can follow along with all the systems that he's found and sent to various people who are going to get them working again. Next, I have to thank Simon Locke for sending me the crystal oscillator. I had no luck finding one anywhere and he had one that was pre-programmed from DigiKey. It turns out they're just not available anywhere either. So I'm very thankful that he had one and he sent it to me. We have to thank Johnny from Re-Enthused for sending me the controller. They go for quite a lot of money on eBay and he did me a very good price, which I didn't want to spend unless I could get the console working. So he came through for me, fantastic. There are more systems going out. One's going to Muffin Making It and two is going to Mark Fixes Stuff. And hopefully Mark can get both of those working so that one of them can go back to Ginger Hippy because he's looking forward to playing on one, just like I am. So that's it for this one. Put links in the description to all of those channels. Also link to the playlist that Ginger Hippy is making so you can follow through all of the systems that he's found and all the details about the abandoned warehouse. So I will see you on the next video. Bye.